after being inspired by, how many of you have heard of Rachel Ray? She's a real, okay, good, hands down. She's a famous chef on TV. And she asked her audience one day, she came up with this program called Yummo. And it's all about teaching kids just like you and their families about eating healthy. So she asked her audience to think of ways that they could help. So I decided I'm going to do something and I'm going to help. So I thought, what could I do? Well, I also was a teacher and I love to cook. So I combined those two things and wrote a book called Cooking School about a teacher, there she is, who loves to cook with her class each and every day. Boys and girls, she is the silliest chef around and teacher. Can you imagine if your teacher every day said, okay, boys and girls, put away all your books, your pencils, and your crayons, and take out your apron and your chef's hat. Can you imagine that? And she said to you, boys and girls, it's time to cook. Can you imagine? All right, well, so that's what this silly teacher does every day. Okay, now I'm going to tell you her name, and I want you to think very carefully as you hear it. Her name is Mrs. Chef. Why would I have named her that? Raise your hand. Why would I have named her? Yes, you in the blue. Because she's a chef, but her name is spelled differently. It's S-H-E-F-F. So I did a twist of her name instead of spelling it correctly, C-H-E-F. Well, anyway, Mrs. Chef teaches at a school called the Old Mill School. Okay? It actually is the name of my school. When I was your age, my elementary school was not Avon Grove Charter School. It was a school called Old Mill Lane. So I decided, let me use my school when I was young, the name of it, and use it in my book. So I called it the Old Mill School. Now, I decided to do 4 books, one for the fall, and that's the one we're going to be reading and talking a lot about today. But there's 4, one for each season. This one is the winter book. You can see the illustrator, the person, her name is Penny Weber, did it with all wintry things. And Mrs. Chef has on a really cool red parka to keep warm. This is the spring book. Notice how it's changing by the season. There's all pretty flowers in the tree. And then last but not least, this is the summer book. Okay? Now, raise your hand. Does anyone in this, out of all of you, go to school in the summer? You do? No, you don't. Put your hands down. But you know what? The students, Mrs. Chef's students, come back to school in the summer. You know why? They have planted vegetables in our spring book, in their garden. So she invites them to come back in the summer and pick and harvest all of the vegetables and fruit and cook. Okay? So that's why we have the summer book. But our fall book is what we're going to be talking about today. Okay? Looks just like it does outside right now. Before we go on to read it, I want to tell you a story, hands down, about the illustrator. What's an illustrator? Yes. Person that writes the book? How many agree? You're close. I'm the person that wrote the book. I wrote the words. An illustrator is what? Yes. That's right. You know what? I never met her in my whole life, the illustrator. We did everything by email. She would send me pictures in an email and I would write back, oh, I really like that, or I don't like that, or change that. We didn't meet until 2 years after we had all the books done. I met her at a cooking event we did, so I finally got to meet her. She's a really special person. Doesn't she draw super well? Her name's Penny Weber. All right, so I'm going to read a little bit of the book to you, okay? So this is when I need good listeners. It was an especially blustery day at the Old Mill School. Mrs. Chef reached for another log to put on the fire, for she wanted the classroom to be cozy for her students. Imagine that if there was a fireplace in your class. Well, on this windy day, Mrs. Chef planned to teach her students about nutrition by making something bright. She opened the doors to the old wooden cabinet at the back of the classroom, and she reached in for stacks of construction paper, colorful tissue paper, and brightly colored markers. A rainbow made from tissue paper would be a great way to show her students that they should eat a rainbow of foods each day.